For more on this, I want to bring in Ned Ryun, founder and CEO of American Majority. He joins us on the phone. Ned, good to talk to you, sir.
Hey, good to be with you, Vince.
It's an amazing thing. So this is a very simple bill. It just says you have to prove you're a U.S. citizen to vote in America, which is already the law that you have to be a citizen. And
Correct.
The left opposes it en masse. Why is that?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious, Vince, that they haven't been importing 12 million illegal immigrants to pick strawberries.
Yeah.
It's been pretty obvious what they're doing, that they are importing what they think is a potential new pool of voters for themselves. And I think there's enough loopholes. I've been tweeting about this the last 48 hours, specifically about non-citizens getting a federal ballot, and was tweeting out the Arizona Medicaid form in which, and I'll just read you the language off of that Medicaid form that will kind of tie into what I think plans are for the left. It says, if you do not submit proof of citizenship and we cannot acquire your proof of citizenship from the Arizona Motor Vehicle Division or the statewide voter registration database, you will receive a federal-only ballot, which only has federal races and no state, county, or local races or initiatives or referendums. And so in black and white, they are telling people via the Arizona Medicaid form, don't worry, if you can't prove citizenship, we'll still make sure that you get a federal-only ballot, meaning people could vote in the presidential, Senate, and U.S. House races. And I've wrote about this a little bit, Vince, in which I've stated, it doesn't take a lot. They've imported 12 million new illegals since Biden came into office. We're not talking about massive fraud that is necessary to win the White House. I remind people that 2016 and 2020 combined won by less than 121,000 votes in the states that actually decided the White House.
Right.
I see no reason why 2024 won't be the same, right? It's going to be a narrow, razor-thin margin.
Yes.
And if I was the left and I had no morals and no ethics, and in fact, my only moral guiding light was political power, why wouldn't you slip 20, 30, 40,000 non-citizens and somehow get them to have an absentee ballot requested and sent and then be able to return it? And that, I think, could be the deciding factor. So, of course, I think the left is absolutely up to this. I think they're making it very obvious with the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats and the White House now saying that we oppose the SAVE Act, which is, again, just a simple reinforcement. If you're not a U.S. citizen and cannot prove that you're a U.S. citizen, you cannot vote in U.S. elections. And Democrats wholesale are saying we are going to oppose this. Leads to a lot of questions.
Yes. And to the extent that they're trying to offer any defense that doesn't include, we're trying to let illegals vote, they say stuff like, well, this will create unnecessary barriers to Americans voting. I'm like, really? Because my impression was that all of us have to have this stupid real ID by next year. And
Correct.
We already have a system that's designed to basically validate that we are U.S. citizens. Why wouldn't we just use that as a way to vote?
Well, again, it goes back to if you really think this is illegal, that this shouldn't happen. I mean, the White House statement today said, well, it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote. Well, then why don't you just reinforce that point as we're coming into a highly contentious election?
Yes.
And they will not do that.
This would be like saying it's illegal to speed, but we're not going to clock anybody's speed on the roadway.
Exactly. And Vince, if you start to put the pieces together, and this is not conspiracy theory, I think it's happening right in front of our eyes. You're putting in ballot boxes back in key states, unsecured ballot drop boxes in Wisconsin and Michigan, other key places. It's very easy for those things, if they're not kept under close surveillance, for a lot of ballots to be stuffed in. Again, I don't want to go into the weeds on this too much, but there's a reason that, like, France outlawed mail-in ballots back in 1975. I mean, there's a whole ballot stuffing situation. I look at our election process today, and guys like Mark Elias, the troublemaking Democratic super lawyer,
right,
and a lot of people like him, they're doing everything in their power to really destroy the integrity of our elections and to cause questions because, again, their one moral guiding light is political power. And so I think it's incumbent. I've been asking questions, obviously, on Twitter a lot the last 48 hours. What is the plan for red state AGs and DAs to actually address this situation, in which I do think it is a serious threat? I think they're going to try a whole series of games. I think Zuck Bucks is going to be a little bit harder to do this time around, just because so many states have outlawed that. So, again, what's the new trick? And I think the new trick is non-citizens getting a federal ballot and being able to vote in these key elections, among other things. And then they brought back the unsupervised ballot drop boxes. So I really want to know where the red state AGs and DAs are in this situation and what they're actually doing to secure the integrity of our elections. And quite frankly, I'm a little troubled, Vince, by the silence that I'm seeing at this point from those AGs and those DAs. The Republic's in the balance. Like, maybe you could step up to the plate and actually do something with the power that you've been given to secure our elections.
Yeah, and you don't have to dive deep into any particular scheme in order to step up front and center and say, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to guarantee that every voter of this state or commonwealth will find these elections credible, and here's how I'm doing it.
Correct. And I think, for example, though, perhaps Missouri's state AG, who seems to be a bit more proactive than others, why would he let the vote of Missouri be diluted by non-citizens voting in mass in some of the other states? I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that some of these other state AGs, even if they don't think it's a problem in their state, they should actually start getting together and putting together some efforts to prevent this in other states. Again, we're in July. Ballots drop September 6th in North Carolina. About 10 days later, in-person voting starts in Pennsylvania. A few days after that, in-person voting starts in Virginia. People need to understand time is quickly evaporating before the election season truly begins. And I'm a little troubled. I have to tell you, Vince, there are a lot of people doing a lot of good work. We're headed in the right direction on a lot of fronts, but I think people are a little delusional if they think Trump has this in the bag.
Although, well, let's cover a couple of things. One, it's amazing to watch what the left is willing to lie about. It's everything, and just the brazen nature of the way they're trying to cover up Joe Biden's medical problems right now is just over the top, or at least has been. They're trying to switch horses right now, late in this campaign. To the extent that they're trying to do that right now, Ned, which is they want a different candidate at the top of the ticket. That there's some comfort found in that, because it's almost like they're trying to say, well, the electoral consequences of keeping Joe at the top of the ticket are so great. It suggests to me that they don't feel like they fully have this in the bag in terms of election rigging.
I think that calls into question their confidence levels. Although I will argue, Vince, in return, this isn't a national election. It comes down to 6 or 7 states. If you've got your ballot harvesting and your non-citizens all lined up in 6 or 7 states, those are the ones that are going to decide it.
Yep.
But I have to tell you, the statement today from the Biden White House, not from Joe Biden. I want to be clear on that. And I made a sarcastic comment, but I think it's probably fairly true. The statement coming from Dr. Jill and the team running the Biden White House, he's not going anywhere. And he has the legal standing. It's like, come and get me. I am not stepping down as the Democratic nominee.
Yes.
And basically, I will be the nominee until otherwise I decide. And he's decided I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, it's pretty staggering to me, just this whiplash that's taking place over the last, call it 10 days, in which, oh my gosh, he needs to go. Well, maybe he shouldn't go. Oh, well, maybe he's going to stay. Like, the changing narrative among the propagandists of, like, we don't even know what we're supposed to say now.
I know.
Is he going to be the nominee or not the nominee? But I have to tell you, I go back to, Vince, the left's political agenda is devastating to the country, but I admire their political tactics, legal tactics. Obviously, they employ illegal, and their commitment to actually going for the win. And I have to tell you, I'm a little concerned that Republicans and the conservative movement are not nearly as committed to achieving and using political power. And until we do, we will not be as successful as we can be.
You have to have that fire in the belly, for sure.
We're up against a bunch of religious zealots.
Yeah.
And I think too many on this side are careerists, like, oh, I had a cool career in D.C., and now I'm going to go on and do something else. And these religious zealots are like, we're going to get power, and we are going to fundamentally change this country.
Yes.
When we gain that power, and we're never going to beat religious zealots with careerists. And I think we have to meet that fire with our own fire. It's a little bit lacking right now.
Right, which is why you bring up that point about the state AGs and making sure that people find their elections credible. Members of Congress who were far too silent on for so long about all of the attacks on the American right, including President Trump. So many sat on the sidelines not wanting to say anything about it until it was obvious that it had reached a critical mass. Then they finally start speaking up. There's too much, kind of jumping in at the tail end of the parade, and instead they should be trying to lead it.
That's right. They should have been out in the forefront
when
this all began, called a year and a half ago, when it was patently obvious that this was a fundamental part of Biden's reelection campaign, this lawfare against Trump, that most people sat on their hands, were quiet. Quite frankly, I have questions about why. And now they're jumping on board when they realize this lawfare is falling apart. So, yeah, we need we need a new generation of Republican leaders that are going to understand we need to have political power, and once we achieve political power, we know how to use political power.
Yes.
Because the American people actually give political power for people to use it, which I think is lost on most Republicans.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point.
Yes.
On the political front, I'm hoping to navigate towards even any sense of optimism from you, Ned, which is this. I do wonder to what extent you think it's a good thing that Biden has both created this chaos and Jill and company have decided to keep him at the top of the ticket. There's part of me that thinks this is kind of great, actually. If we're going to have anybody up there politically, it should be Joe.
It is. I mean, Donald Trump is maybe the luckiest politician we've seen in our lifetime in that he's probably going to get Joe Biden. He had Hillary Clinton in 2016. He gets Joe Biden in 2024. No, I don't want people to think I'm being pessimistic. I want people to understand we need to have a clear-eyed reality of what we're up against. The left's precious is political power.
Yeah.
And just because Donald Trump's in the lead in the polls and just because we're really in a very, very good news cycle, again, it's people like, where's Donald Trump? Why is he so silent for the last days? Well, it's quite rude, Vince, to interrupt your opponent while he's self-destructing. So I think Donald Trump is being extremely polite at this moment.
Yes.
No, I think we need to understand what we're up against. I do have reason for optimism. Again, I look at some of the trends in the polls and all these numbers, and this is great.
Yep.
I just think that we have to have a clear-eyed perspective on what we're going to be up against in the next 4 months, and we better have our A game ready on absentee ballot generation, absentee ballot chase, securing against non-citizens getting federal ballots, because I will not be I'm not going to be confident until hopefully November 6th. I mean, obviously the left wants to push these into election weeks, but hopefully that by November 6th we'll realize we have given the Republic a chance by returning Donald Trump to the White House. So I'm going to be continuing to sound the alarm of let's not rest on our laurels. Let's not spike the football at the 20-yard line.
Yep.
Let's run this race all the way through the finish line and do everything that we can.
And Ned Ryun, I know you have the ear of a lot of people who are involved in a lot of this, and you're wearing them out like, hey, do the right thing here. Are you encouraged at all by the RNC and under new leadership? Michael Whatley, Laura Trump, they've made election integrity a feature, at least in their public disclosures about what they're focused on. Is that the real deal?
Yes. How's that? I think they're moving in the right direction, Vince. Again, I made a move to change RNC leadership in January of 2023.
Yeah.
Right, with Harmeet. You lose 13 months, 14 months. I think that's extremely valuable time. I think the right decisions were made, obviously in March, to replace Ronna. I told Trump, if she stays in as the RNC chair, I think you are setting yourself up for failure in the 24 elections. So they finally made the right decision. They have some of the right people in the right place. I will say this, the thing that gives me the most confidence, Vince, in all of this, Susie Wiles, campaign manager for Donald Trump that he brought back March of 2021. Susie Wiles, the discipline that you're seeing right now from Trump's silence, that is a direct influence of Susie. The discipline that you are seeing from the actual campaign team, and again, the RNC and the Trump campaign have obviously melded into kind of one organization. A lot of that Susie. And also Susie comes out of the Florida Republican Party. Mm-hmm. Guess who embraced absentee ballot generation and chase for decades? It was the Florida Republican Party. And guess who actually helped run those statewide efforts? Susie Wiles. So you have somebody in at the top of the campaign who is extremely professional, very disciplined, who actually is a big believer in doing the right things that I think are going to lead to Trump winning in these 6 or 7 key states that will decide the White House. So I'm confident that he has the right team in place. And the question is, do we have the time and the resources to fully accomplish all of the right things? We're headed in the right direction. I think there are a lot of things that are being done that are going to lead to success, but I think it'd be foolish to rest on our laurels in July. We've got to run all the way through the finish line through, till polls close on November 5th.
All right. Ned Ryun, this conversation will continue. We'll have to have you back soon, sir. Thank you very much from the American Majority. Good to talk to you.